Story 1. People always focus on the demon in their sleep paralysis story, which, yes, is very scary. But my struggle is always the less talked about paralysis part. Being able to see things unfolding without being able to physically react really messes me up and is exhausting. Story 2. I used to get sleep paralysis all the time in my late teens and early 20s, but only once did I ever see anything. I had just gone through a breakup, and I went to bed crying. When I woke up, unable to move, there was this hazy shadow cat slinking around on the bed, purring and rubbing against me. I didn't live with any cats at that time, but I felt comforted and drifted back to sleep. Story 3. I've never actually seen anything. It's just a presence in the room. I always know it's coming on when I hear what sounds like static or a waterfall, really faint at first and then getting louder and louder. By the time I first hear it, I can't move. It feels like someone is just outside of my vision as the sound gets louder and louder. When it gets at its loudest, suddenly bam, it's over and I can move. It's so weird. I'm old now, so when I first experienced these as a child, there was no internet to look it up. It was absolutely horrifying, and trying to explain it to my mom, I sounded insane. Now I just roll with it and I actually rarely experience it anymore. But it used to come around every other month or so. Story 4. I have sleep paralysis but no demons. It's more of an annoyance for me nowadays than scary, and I've trained myself to break out of it very quickly. It does feel like if I can't break out of it, I'm gonna suffocate, though. A long time ago, I would have auditory hallucinations during it that sounded like footsteps running toward me, but thankfully that has stopped. Story 5. Back when I was a bit younger and going through a really rough period, I encountered a human-like woman. Her appendages were longer than a normal person's, with long and sharp digits. She had no distinguishable features except for black bulbous eyes, pale white skin, and a black hole for a mouth. When she opened it, the noise that came out was a mixture of radio static, children screaming, and a vacuum being opened up like a hole in a spaceship. Nowadays, I'm so used to sleep paralysis that there are 3 indicators and I can fight through them. One indicator is losing my glasses in a dream, another is my phone breaking in a dream, and the third is dogs smothering me in a dream. If any of those things happen in my dream, it's an indicator that I'll eventually undergo sleep paralysis. I can usually fight my way out of it. Story 6. I do not have sleep paralysis, but I do have hallucinations, and they typically look like dark, hunched-over humanoid shapes. One time, I was lying on my side, and an old hag bent over and looked me in the face. That was probably the most terrifying. Sleep masks have helped quite a bit. Story 7. They do not look like anything. There is a strong presence in the room that is dark, heavy, and suffocating. I have seen dark figures and shadows standing over me or across the room, but never any distinguishing features. Story 8. I only had sleep paralysis twice before during very stressful times in my life, but mine was a tall, shadowy, skinny, humanoid form with bright yellow eyes. It just stood there. It freaked me out for a minute before I realized what had happened. Then I just went back to sleep. Story 9. My dad says his one looked like The Grudge. Apparently a woman with very long hair and a white dress would sit beside him or caress his face ever since he was a small child. Story 10. I haven't had any strong sleep paralysis episodes in years. I had a mini episode a couple of weeks back randomly, but it was just me breathing heavily, unable to move. Compared to what I'm used to, it's hard to say it was even a sleep paralysis episode. So, my entities are static shadowy figures, usually humanoid-shaped, and sometimes a cat that jumps on my bed. If I look at them, my brain is assaulted by an increasing buzzing that hurts and shakes everything. If I try to move, the buzzing gets stronger, and the world slowly grows red. I feel like I'm slowly being consumed. Usually, it is the humanoid entity in the doorway. There's been a shadow on the wall a couple of times. The cat has appeared 3 times that I can remember. The consistent theme is feeling like my brain is being assaulted while I lay trapped. Interestingly enough, I've always found myself on my back after I wake up, never in another position. Learning not to fight it helped clear up the episodes and made them mild when they did happen. It seems clearing up my unresolved stress made them go away. Story 11. I used to suffer from this as a child, and it was mainly always a demon who looked like a woman with long black hair. No true face, just shadowy and bony, but you could just tell. I haven't suffered from this in decades because the last couple of times it happened, all I did was repeat, "God save me," over and over in my head, and I would break out of it. It hasn't happened again since then. Story 12. Are there people who suffer from sleep paralysis regularly? I've always heard of it as a random instance people can experience occasionally. I experienced it when I was in high school, and it was terrifying until I regained the ability to move. I don't remember a demon, just being unable to move and only able to look around with my eyes, which put me into a slight panic before I snapped out of it after what felt like under a minute or so. That was 20 years ago, so I don't remember exactly. Story 13. Like a handful of people here, I have never experienced any demons. However, sometimes I'll hallucinate that someone who lives in the house, my mom or boyfriend, has come into the room to do something like get something from the wardrobe or delve into a sock drawer, and then leave. I've tried to call out to them to help me, but they don't hear, and I understand it's because I can't actually move my mouth or use my voice. Then I eventually wake up. Time is hard to gauge in that state and seek them out to ask what they heard and what they saw, because I'm usually curious to find out if my eyes were open. Otherwise, I don't understand how I can see the room in such detail. The response has always been, "Huh, I haven't been into your room." So, I guess my demons look like my loved ones ignoring me. Story 14. I do not see them. I hear and feel them. Sometimes it is murmurs, growling, or shouting. Or, it feels like an intense pressure is on top of me and my head is going to explode. Completely paralyzed. I have learned to just lean into it and not panic. I have started focusing on moving my little finger and I snap out of it. Eventually, I am back sleeping. I dare not open my eyes because I do not want to see something I would regret. Story 15. Just asked a buddy this, and he said he doesn't have one. But I have an uncle and aunt who said they saw a monkey. I know I've heard of it in the Mexican community. A sleep paralysis demon called El Chango. Though even my American coworker said he had a monkey, so I don't know what that's about. I had one and didn't really have a demon. Felt like a mouse was gnawing my fingers. And for whatever reason, my view would switch to Frisia from Dragon Ball Z slowly walking up my stairs to get me. Weird. Story 16. I looked over by my bedroom door, and standing there, probably 7 feet tall, it was pitch black with the scariest look on its face. Bright yellow eyes stared back at me, and it stood on 2 hoof-like feet. Other than that, it was just pitch black all around with no other discernible shape. I remember looking at it and being so terrified that I quickly looked away. The second I did, it felt like an elephant began sitting on me and pressing me through my bed. I couldn't breathe or move. I had a panic attack once it was over. Story 17. For me, it depends on where I am. In Argentina, it's an old witch with a long nose and long hair. She sits crouched on my chest and screams into my ear. It happens so often I just got bored of it and I would think, oh good, this, again. In Hawaii, it's a Doberman dog with no skin, just muscle and sinew, who runs into the bed and tries to maul my neck. This is the scariest as it rushes at me. In New Zealand, it's a tall, lanky shadow figure that just watches me from the door. Not in a scary or threatening way, but like it's trying to tell me it had a bad dream and wants to sleep in mom and dad's bed. Story 18. I once managed to finesse a sleep paralysis demon into an alluring lover. It was basically lucid dreaming but in sleep paralysis. I knew it wasn't real, but it was amazing. Story 19. They were pitch black and came from the shadows in the corner of my room. There would always be 2 or 3 back when my sleep paralysis was really bad. Skinny, animal and human-like, and really strong. A tiny hint of red in their eyes. I hated them. They were incredibly scary, and I didn't want to go to sleep during that time at all. They did unspeakable things, and I couldn't move, and at times I was forced to watch. I haven't had sleep paralysis like that in years, though. Now I can force myself to wake up if it starts to happen. Story 20. I have experienced sleep paralysis for over 30 years, and I have seen the demon or entity once or twice at most. Once, it was a Joker-like face slowly emerging from behind an end table. The other time, it was the more common witch-style figure in a corner. Story 21. It only happened to me twice, but it was all audio. I had my eyes open and heard the sound of wet feet slapping rapidly against the tile floor as it rushed toward my bed. It murmured the same phrase in my ear 3 times over in a demonic voice, but I couldn't tell you what it was saying. It sounded like some sort of Latin played in reverse. The second time, I heard running toward me and a deep voice say, "I'll kill you," almost like a roar, and I jumped up out of it. Story 22. I have both sleep paralysis and hallucinations, and my paralysis demon has always been something I'm afraid of, and that's changed as I aged. When I was young, it was more of a monster, nothing that had a concrete form, and was more of a large, shadowy mass that lurked in the corner of my room, like a dark spot, but you just know something is watching you from within it. It would also be things like massive spiders and snakes that would lunge at me or start to crawl towards me. As I got older, it became more humanoid, usually a hooded figure standing in my doorway staring at me. I also had a very strange one where a giant chunk of flesh hit the standing fan I had in the room and splattered chunks everywhere. Hallucinations are much worse because at least with sleep paralysis I know what's going on as soon as I can't move, and that snaps me out of it quickly. But hallucinations don't tend to go away once I start to move. All my hallucinations have been people sneaking into my room. A man with a hooded sweatshirt standing in my doorway, and as soon as we make eye contact, he startles and runs away. I've woken up and had an old, dirty head bending over my face, and I could have sworn I felt her crusty hair touching my cheek. Her face was so close. Someone in dark clothes trying to tiptoe their way toward my bathroom, holding a bat in their hands. And when I start to get out of bed to move towards them, they're still there until my brain figures out that it's not real. Sleeping is weird. Story 23. My first experience was a tall man with long arms and legs, all black. He entered my room, walked to the end of my bed, and then slowly climbed on top of me. He was either pushing me into my bed or sitting on my chest. I was facing the right and couldn't turn my head to get a good look. Terrified, I went to scream for help. My mouth opened, and nothing came out. More panic ensued. Finally, my body came back online, and I could turn my head. I looked to the left and saw that the door was closed. Somehow, the logical part of my brain kicked in, and the fear subsided. I woke up my parents and told them I had just been attacked by a demon. Then I learned about sleep paralysis. One attack was enough. I can feel the onset, and I just snap out of it. Story 24. One day, a dark shadow was on top of me while I was sleeping and kept pushing on my shoulder, so I could not move. Another day, I saw a beautiful little dog near my bed, but could not move to pet him. Story 25. I've had a child standing by my side shaking me, yelling for help, a tarantula crawling towards me on top of my bed covers and then crawling through a slit in them right above my chest. I've had a girl crawling quickly on all fours past my bedroom door and then slowly crawling into my room. Tetris blocks falling down my wall, but the edges were rounded, and they were soft so they would bounce instead of fitting nicely in the slots. A man yelling in my face while I am chained to a chair, and his face distorts, his mouth becomes large, and his head shakes violently. The paralysis happens once or twice a week at minimum. Often, it is just whatever I am dreaming causing a night terror, and then me waking up. But actually, I'm just still asleep with my eyes open. So it's whatever I am dreaming of on top of what I am seeing. I don't have something sitting on my chest like the pictures you see. It's just the utter inability to move. If I try to speak, it's often utter nonsense, but in my brain, I can tell what I'm trying to say. I most often make wailing noises of terror, but always the inability to move. Coming out of it, if I get woken up by a partner or wake up organically, often sounds like it does in the movies when someone gets shell-shocked and the world suddenly starts to sound again. Story 26. Mine has a ragged cloak on. Can't see his face. He slithers on the floor, kind of like a snake, and makes his way onto my bed and lies on my back. I sleep on my belly, and breathes in my face. I always close my eyes when it's on my bed, so I haven't seen his face yet. Luckily, I haven't had sleep paralysis in a while. Whenever I feel it starting to happen, I jump up out of bed before I can't move at all. The sensation of a sleep paralysis episode starts at my feet, kind of like static, and makes its way up my body until I can't move anymore. Story 27. I only had one dream like that. It was a giant doll with black holes for eyes, a stitched mouth, and scraggly black hair. The skin looked like human leather because you could see bruises all over it. There were stitching seams all over as well. I woke up to that sewing my mouth closed. As it was pulling the last thread, I tried screaming, but it was completely muffled. It just kind of shifted out of my view and was gone. So I bolted to my bedroom door to get out, but I tried talking to the door and realized everything was all good. I haven't had one like that since, but it was early this year. Story 28. Kind of like shadows. Once I felt this presence and saw a black mass lying next to me. Another time I can remember, it was like a shadowy little girl in a baseball cap just looking at me at the end of my bed. Story 29. I saw a post on Tumblr that said ever since they came onto their sleep paralysis demon, it stopped appearing. So I tried that and mine also disappeared.